He supported that Arkansas Valley conduit, securing $550 million for that project since 2009. Big deal. Many of you may not know this yet, but he helped secure $13 million for the city of Pueblo to replace Union Avenue Bridge. If anybody's been under that bridge and seen the conditions of that bridge. The repairs hopefully will be coming soon, but he was a big part of securing that funding, so thank you for that as well. And Senator Bennet also supported the Pueblo Jobs Act, which is going to help the community with our economic redevelopment at the former Pueblo Chemical Depot. He was instrumental in that at the congressional level as well. So I just want to personally thank you for being here. Thank you for coming to hear us, because you may or may not know, for about 3 representatives now, we've never been heard for in Pueblo specifically on the congressional side. I have to tell you, as a state legislator working with Senator Bennet, he always was picking up the phone anytime I called to ask for help, because I knew our congressional delegation wouldn't answer the phone or wouldn't figure out how to help us. But Senator Bennet, you always would, and I always appreciate that about you. So thank you for coming to Pueblo. Thank you all for being here. We're excited.
Let's give Danae Escar a round of applause. She was such a fighter for Pueblo at the state legislature. She didn't actually have to go up to the state capitol. You could hear her from here. And then a fighter as your commissioner, an amazing partner on everything that had to do with Pueblo, with rural Colorado, with southern Colorado. And I want to thank all of you for being here today. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I know we're on a Memorial Day weekend. I heard a rumor that it's graduation weekend. So congratulations to the graduates of Pueblo East and throughout the community. That's an amazing moment in their lives, and it reminds me of the reason why we're all here. You know, it really is about the kids that are graduating from Pueblo at this moment in their lives. You know, they have their whole lives ahead of them. And we have a responsibility, I think, to fulfill the obligations that other generations of Americans have fulfilled. That other generations of Coloradans have fulfilled. To make sure that the people coming after us actually have more opportunity and a lot less than the generation that came before. And now, you know, everywhere I travel in Colorado, people feel like their kids aren't going to live as good a life as they live. Every single county I'm in, people feel like their kid may not even be able to afford to live in that county, including Pueblo County. And we need to turn that around, because I think that feeling, that's the loss of the sense that the American dream is out of reach, is not the only reason Donald Trump was elected president, but it is one of the reasons he was elected president. I blame him for many, many things. My list is very long. But getting elected is not one of those things. Yours is longer. My mom's is longer than yours is. I was coming down from Denver, and every 5 minutes my mom was sending me one more article to read, one more clip from MSNBC or something. But anyway, I think it's a reminder, these kids that are graduating, it's a reminder of what our obligation really is, and why it's so important for us to fight to preserve this democracy, and why it's so important for you to be here on Memorial Day. And again, thank you very much. I think there is not a senator in the U.S. Senate that has had more town halls in this moment than I have had. I've had more town halls than anybody. And I'm sure Pueblo is going to be the best. So we'll see. We'll see about that. The other thing I want to say, just because it is Memorial Day, is we have some veterans sitting here in the front row. And that is, thank you. Thank you for being here. Not a surprise when you're at the home of heroes that we would have veterans in the front row to remind us what this Memorial Day is all about. I came just now, gentlemen and ladies, from a meeting at the VFW in Fountain. That's where I was right before I was coming here, to have a much smaller town hall with veterans to hear from them about how the VA is working well and not so well for them, and as usual, we're falling short on a lot of dimensions. And there's a lot more for us to do to make sure Colorado is the best place in America to be a veteran. There's no reason why this state can't be the best place to be a veteran, but we got a lot longer to go. And but I want to thank you for being here, and thank you for your service, and thank you all for being here. I mentioned earlier that I have more town halls than anybody. The other thing I want to say is we don't screen your questions in these town halls. So whatever it will be, it will be. And I just want to say again, thank you very much for showing up. And with that, I'll turn it over. We are gonna pull numbers from the tickets that you guys submit, or no, we're gonna pull numbers that match the tickets that you have, and then we'll call 2 tickets at a time, and then you can ask your question or bring your criticism or whatever it is you'd like to say, and then I'll answer. Is that good?
That works. And
All right.
when your ticket is called, if you could stand or raise your hand up so we can find you, that'd be great. The first ticket is going to be 7772. That's the last 4 digits. Will be 7772.
Right over here.
And the second ticket is going to be 7745. 7745.
Go Pam.
Okay. So I'm just wondering, why are you running for governor when you have years left in the Senate, where we need a solid and experienced team? Is another campaign that all politicians live to enjoy?
Well, I can't believe we called on you first. This was supposed to be there until the end. I appreciate the question, Pam. Let me say this. One, this is an official meeting. It's a Senate meeting, not a meeting for the governor's race. Sorry, I just want to make sure. So I will address it briefly, but I'm going to move on to other stuff. But let me just say, in short, that I think every single one of us is thinking right now about what we can do to make the most difference in this democracy, to make the most difference for our country. And I made the decision that we are going to have a fight in Washington that's really important, and we're going to fight here that's really, really important. And I think it's also critical for us to have a positive vision for what this is going to be once we get through this chaos. And I see no reason why Colorado can't be the best state in America to raise our kids. You know, to answer that question I was asking at the beginning about the kids that are graduating from this high school. So that is the decision. As much as I love campaigning, that's not the reason why. But I appreciate your question, and let's move on to thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael Herzog. I have a question about what are Democrats doing? What can we do to ensure that we get more members of Congress to take back some control and take back what Congress needs to be doing as a branch of government next year?
Thank you. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for asking that, because that's the vital thing we have to do. But first of all, this is a profoundly reactionary moment in American history that we're stating the obvious. But sometimes we lose sight of the fact that we've been through this before. This is not the first time this has happened in America. And I want to say, just at the outset, since you give me the opportunity to say it, we have no excuse to be fatalistic. We have no excuse to lose hope. Sometimes when you listen to the people on the cable at night, they're trafficking in fatalism. They're trafficking in a lack of hope. We owe the kids that are graduating from this high school much more than that. We cannot lose that hope. That's right. We need to make sure they understand the history of this country, and they understand the tough periods that Americans have been through before, and the sacrifices that Americans have made in similarly difficult situations. You know, and I could give you a million, but let me give you a couple. The women who fought for 100 years without anybody knowing who their name was for their self-evident right to vote in America. When we were preventing women in this country from voting, there were many countries in the world that were not only just permitting women to vote, it was an obvious thing to do, and yet women in America had to fight for 100 years. And it was a tough fight. It was a violent fight. A lot of them didn't live to see the Constitution changed so they could be allowed to vote. But because of what they did, women here can vote, and my 3 daughters can vote. And they deserve to be remembered by our actions now. You think about somebody who I do all the time, somebody like John Lewis, who sacrificed his skull on the Edmund Pettus Bridge to those billy clubs, not for himself, but for the sake of democracy, and his willingness to do that. Sometimes people say to me, it's all so corrupt, I'm not even going to vote. It's all so corrupt, there's nothing we can do. Do you think John Lewis didn't think that this country or this government was corrupt? Who has more reason today to believe this society is corrupt than John Lewis? I'm sorry he didn't see, I'm glad he didn't see Donald Trump elected president, but he would be telling us what to do, which is to get into trouble, which is what we need to do. And we need to turn out to vote in the next election. That's critically important in these midterms. And what we've learned as a result of all this craziness in Washington is there's nothing self-executing about our democracy. There never has been anything self-executing about our democracy. We have to show up, and if we don't, bad things happen. And so the first thing we can do, after we do the protests, after we gather together in these town halls, after we make sure we're doing what we're doing, and thank you very much for writing me when you saw me banging on Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard and all the rest of those mugs. After all that, we got to make sure we turn out the vote. And what I would say to you is the most important thing that we can do is make sure we engage young people in that effort. That we all make that part of our responsibility in Pueblo County. And I have no doubt that if we do the work, we're going to win that midterm back. And for people that say it's not important or it doesn't matter or it's too late or it's self-interested to worry about that midterm, let me assure you, having voted for the Affordable Care Act in 2010 or 09, whatever it was, and then having to run for re-election, the Republicans were doing everything they could to win that first midterm, which they did. Now we need to do the same thing. Thank you, Michael, for raising it.
Our next two tickets are going to be 7837, 7837, and 7748. 7748.
Yes, sir. Yes. Or I'm not sure which one you are, so I can't actually tell. 48. And which was the other one? No, that's it. Yes, sir. Oh, you're.
So many things to choose from to ask you. I'm a retired physician. Actually, my wife, Melissa, and my buddy Matt are also physicians. And so got asked about Medicaid. And I was also on the board of BCHC for several years. Great organization, serves over a quarter of the people in Pueblo. And you look at what's in that bill for Medicaid, which just makes no sense at all. And I think it's easy if there's good bits to preserve the good bits, the child, increase the child tax credit, stuff like that for people who really need it. And the whole bill is pointed at getting this tax cut for predominantly for people who just don't need it. So you gotta stop the Medicaid thing in the Senate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Doctor. I agree with you. Let me just say a couple things. One is the pain in Colorado from these Medicaid cuts is going to be extraordinary, and it's going to be all across our state. And a lot of that pain is going to be felt in rural areas. A lot of that pain is going to be felt in very red areas of Colorado. All of you know red areas, living in Pueblo and rural areas. You know it. That the only safety net that anybody has is Medicaid. That's it. And we have to fight to the death to try to save it. That's what we have to do because of the damage that will be done. But what else? I'll bet you believe this. I've never met you before, and you might shake your head and say no. One of the amazing ironies about the situation we find ourselves in is that our healthcare system is actually one of the worst healthcare systems in the industrialized world. You know, we should have a much better healthcare system than the one we have. I just had a young woman who graduated from Western in Gunnison this week in my office. And she was with some other students who were just graduating as well. And she said, I was going around just like this saying, you know, ask me. And she said, I'm going to be off my parents' insurance in about a year. Of course, she's on it because of the Affordable Care Act, where that was one of the things we did. But she said, I'm going to be off it in a year. And she said, in order to have insurance, what am I supposed to do? Do I have to work 2 jobs? Do I have to work 3 jobs? There's so many people in Colorado who are not qualified for Medicaid, but they can't afford health insurance. Because our system costs twice as much as any system in the industrialized world. I mention that not to get distracted from the Medicaid cuts, because those are really serious. But it also means we have to fight for a much better healthcare system than what we have. And it might come as news to you, but Donald Trump has absolutely no interest in trying to figure that out for the American people. So some of you are asking, what might a Democratic agenda be to win those elections in that off year? It might include a much better healthcare system than the healthcare system that we have. Universal healthcare in the United States of America. Angela, how are you?
I'm great. My name is Angela Chigona. I'm the president and CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of Pueblo County. And I appreciate you always talking about young people and we all know they're our future. And so has I think looked at as an expert in the Senate because you were a superintendent for K through 12, and I appreciate you championing that. So I'm asking, my ask here today is 21st Century Community Learning Centers, which I know you're familiar with, and I've talked to people in your office, including Jacob, and he's great. I want you to know that.
He comes from a long legacy of great people in that office.
And so it's really critical, and I want people here, even in public, to know that 6 of our 9 clubhouses are funded predominantly by 21st Century Community Learning Centers. And of course, in that city budget, Trump's recommended budget, it zeroes that out. Well, maybe other very important things, but I just look to you as a champion for school-age kids, and I'm hoping that you're going to be speaking to this 21st Century Community Learning Centers and the importance of out-of-school time, especially if we're coming up on summer. It's critical that kids have that time. We're on a 4-day school week here in Pueblo. Our kids need places on Fridays like Boys and Girls Clubs and YMCAs. And so we need that 21st century funding. It'd be devastating to Pueblo and all across this country and this state if 21st century money goes away. It's been a nonpartisan and usually increase because of the results are so compelling. So please be a champion out there in the Senate for us.
Thank you. We'll fight for it. If there's some things that you want me to say on the floor, just tell us. As usual, I'll follow your instructions. But if I can use this to make a broader point too, which is this. I was a school superintendent. By the way, the district I worked in, I never saw a high school that looks like this high school. This is unbelievable. Unbelievable. I wish every high school it's up, isn't it? Yeah, it's incredible. But I was in Pueblo. I don't know if you remember this. I was in Pueblo on the first Friday that Pueblo went to a 4-day school week. And I came to the Boys and Girls Club on that Friday to meet with parents there to talk about the 5th day, because I was so worried about what would happen to the kids on that day. And I have to honestly say, I still worry about that. And we have a lot of school districts in Colorado where kids are only going to school 4 days a week. And I'm not here to make an argument about the number of days that Pueblo County is in school, but I am here to say we have to figure out how to use that 5th day. And we have to use that other time as well. I met a month ago, maybe a month ago, over at the Union Hall with steel workers at Embrace. I mean, sure, probably even less than a month ago. And we had a conversation about education in the community and across the state of Colorado. One of the things we agreed on was the idea that there shouldn't be a kid in this state that graduates from high school without the skills to earn a living wage, not just the skills to earn a minimum wage. You know, kids all over the industrialized world, kids all over Europe and other countries, that's a matter of course that you're expected. If you don't go to college, which is a lot of kids, just like in America, it's a lot of kids, you at least graduate with what you need to know to be able to earn a living wage. And the work that you're doing at the Boys and Girls Club, the work that we could be doing over the summer to make sure we engage kids so they develop the skills they need, and on that 5th day and in their schools, I think if we were more targeted in what we were trying to achieve, we could put people in a position to be able to propel themselves and their families through our economy in ways that they can't today. So I'm using your question as an excuse to say we have to find a way to do more. Okay.
Next 2 tickets. The first one's going to be 7784. 7784. And then 7734. 7734.
Yeah, hi, Senator. My question is, why is Chuck Schumer still in leadership position with the Democrats in the Senate? You talk about getting into good trouble. I've not seen that from Senate Democrats once. We are getting beat left and right. We're getting destroyed by this administration. They're disappearing people to death camps in other countries, and Chuck Schumer is saying just wait until they get to under 40% approval rating? That's crazy. He needs to be gone. Senate leadership needs to be gone. You guys have lost. We need to do better. Thank you.
Thank you for your non-question. I appreciate it. That's all right. No, I appreciate it. Thank you. What's next? Well, I can't. I mean, I've answered it before. I'm happy to do it again. Look, I don't think that there is an institution in America where we shouldn't be reconsidering the leadership that's there. I'm talking about everything. And I was, some of you may remember it, that I was the first Democrat after Joe Biden's horrific debate performance with Donald Trump to go on at national television and say, we're going to lose in a landslide if we don't do something different here. And we did lose in a landslide. I'll take that note. I appreciate it. But the point is, we need to have our best foot forward on all these matters. I agree with you. Thank you.
My question is, how are we going to recover from all this? For example, my daughter is married to a Mexican man who is also now a U.S. citizen. Their family's flying in for their 4 or 5 months in Pueblo, along with his mother, who has a 10-year visa, which she's had for years. And I'm really worried about them arriving at DIA this afternoon and what that's going to be like. And the fact that it doesn't seem to matter whether somebody is here legally, whether somebody has citizenship, if they are not a white American looking Republican that's going to tear up the Congress, the Constitution. You know, how are we going to recover from all this damage that's being done?
Thank you for being here. Can you tell me your name?
My name is Kathy Schleifer.
And I don't want to make you late for the airport.
No, we're not. They have a brother in Denver that's picking them up. We'll get them tomorrow.
Thank you please feel free to say, I'm sorry. Thank you for being here, thank you for your question. A lot of people have the same kind of question on your mind. And I think we will recover from this. As I said earlier, I think we have no right, first of all, to imagine a world where we don't recover from this. Because prior generations have always managed to do it. You know, we are in that reactionary period. After these reactionary periods, in American history, throughout the entire country's history, there has never been a moment where we didn't have an extended progressive period after that reactionary period. I believe that's what we're going to face. But we're going to have to do the work. You know, we're doing the work by being here, having this town hall. We're doing the work by pushing back on the stuff that he's doing, even though he obviously, the president, doesn't care about what we say or what any of us do. We got to continue to push. We've seen people like the Chief Justice of the United States stand up and say to the President of the United States, you can't, call on a judge to be impeached just because you disagree with the opinion that they render. And it's little pieces like that that a million times over and a million times over are the things that in the end are going to sustain our democracy. I wish I could tell you that there's a silver bullet. There's not a silver bullet. I wish I could tell you that this were going to be over tomorrow. It's not going to be over tomorrow. You know, we're going to be fighting for the rest of our lives to preserve this democracy. And that's the way it has always been, and that's the way it will be now. I will say to all of you that are here a couple things on immigration. One, we want you to let our office know. Here, Jacob, where are you? Can you come up here so people can see who you are? You know, we spent a huge amount. He does deserve a round of applause. He does an amazing job. We want, if people are picked up or if people are scared, we want to hear about it. We want to know about it. We can work on cases. We're not always successful, but we often are successful on specific cases. And second, you may remember, I'm just moving a little away, but you may remember I was part of the Gang 8 in 2013. Man, that seems like a lifetime ago. But that was the last time we wrote a comprehensive immigration bill in the Senate, and it passed with 68 votes. And that bill got killed by the Tea Party in the House of Representatives, and it's a tragedy because the whole future of our country would have been different, I think, had we passed that bill. And instead, we had Donald Trump roll down his escalator at Trump Tower saying Mexicans are rapists, and he was off to the races in his first presidential campaign and then his second presidential campaign. We are a nation of laws. We are a nation of immigrants. That is our heritage, and that is the heritage that we will reclaim. So thank you for being here.
Next two questions are going to be 7809, 7809, and 7770. 7770.
I didn't know your question.
Good. I really intended not to ask any questions. I'm here to listen, which you need to do more of, but I just gotta ask you, I'm glad to see your enthusiasm, but I really think we've already crossed the line. When the Supreme Court has ordered this president to bring back from El Salvador, now, where's the accountability? We're not a democracy anymore. We weren't decide what they're on, wipe them out.
Well, I think that's a decision for us to make, whether we're going to let Donald Trump destroy our democracy or not. He's hell-bent to do it, but it's not up to him, John, I don't think. It's up to us. It's up to us. There are people, I'm not going to excuse anything. I'm obviously a Diola. But it's not like we haven't lived in a country before when we had elected officials not pay attention to. Really? Have you ever heard of Brown versus the Board of Education? I mean, and by the way, we have a huge amount of unfinished business to do beyond just saving the democracy from Donald Trump. Part of that is making sure that every school in America is something that we'd be proud to send our kids. So we have no right, not only to give up fighting Trump, but we've got to make sure that we've got a positive agenda about what we're fighting for. So I understand, I hear your disappointment. I hear you. Look, nobody should be cavalier about where we are. My point is only we can't be fatalistic about where we are. You can be, and that's up to you. But it will create a self-fulfilling prophecy. It will create a self-fulfilling prophecy. And my argument only is that no other generation of Americans have been willing to turn it into that self-fulfilling prophecy. So I'll tell you one way I think the world really is different right now than any other generation of Americans has ever faced. And that's because we don't have journalism anymore in this country. And that was a very important part of fixing our democracy. Those muckraking journalists, in prior generations made a huge difference. And we listened to all of them. Do you think we would be listening to somebody talk about making Canada the 51st state if Walter Cronkite were still reading us the news every night? Do you think that we'd be talking about building? I mean, it's partly that, and that means that our role is even more important in some ways than it was before. Don't give up. Don't give up. We can't give up. That's what he wants us to do. And because I know you and I know who you are, I know you weren't saying give up. But we're not around the bend here. Go Oilers! Go. And Nuggets.
Hi, thanks for being with us today. My question's a little different. I live in an apartment complex with about 200 other individuals. Many of these people depend on the commodities that are being distributed on the 4th Street location here in Pueblo, the federally funded public food. And people around the building are very upset. They had heard that this program was going to be cut or completely stopped. And many people there, all of them, matter of fact, depend on this food distribution program to get through the month. Thank you.
Thank you for raising it, and thank you for your advocacy. In my opinion, that falls right into the bucket of the conversation we were having earlier about Medicaid. This is the safety net that's so critically important to our school kids. By the way, critically important to our farmers and ranchers who supply the food that we're talking about. So they've got massive cuts in their House bill on the food programs, just like on the Medicaid programs, and we got to fight this and not hope, but fight it in the Senate and try to make the best case we can possibly make there to try to make them change their minds. I'm not going to give you a lot of hope that they're going to do that, but we're going to try. So thank you for your advocacy.
The next two questions are going to be 7733, 7733, and 7708.
What did you guys do up there to not get tickets or not?
Hi, my question is about the national parks and public lands. I see that they're cutting $1 billion from the National Park Service and wanting to sell our public lands in this House bill. And public lands are for everybody. This should not be a partisan issue. It belongs to all of us, not just those who can afford it. Can we get more money for the national parks? They're falling apart.
They are, and thank you for raising it. And this truly, a lot of these things are not partisan issues. This truly is not. They're in Colorado, Republicans, Democrats, and other affiliated voters, everybody supports our public lands. They understand this is a huge, part of who we are. This is a part of our culture. It's our history. I was so proud when I spent years and years and years working to try to protect Camp Hale, where the 10th Mountain Division trained, and Joe Biden decided to make it the first national monument of his administration. And he said he would fly out to Colorado to consecrate it. I'll say it to this young man over here who asked the Schumer question. And my campaign team, I was running for the Senate back then, it was another campaign, said, well, he said, the numbers aren't very high. Are you sure you want him to come into the state? I said, of course he needs to come into the state because our veterans need to see their president commemorating the work that is done at Camp Hale. There was done at Camp Hale. Critical story that I used to tell when I was running the last time about people that had come to Colorado, some of the greatest mountaineers in American history, and climbers and skiers, and guys who had never ever, they were all guys who had never ever seen snow before. They came together, they trained for 3 years, and then they got sent over to Italy, where they were able to push the Nazis out of the tops of those mountains in Italy and helped end World War II. They did, and they were trained right here in Colorado. That's now public land. Let me tell you about another camp. This wasn't your question, but I'm using, this is why public land is so important. At exactly the same time that camp was built, and those men were there, as everybody in this room knows, on the southeastern plains of Colorado, there was another camp. And that camp was called Camp Amachi. And as John and everybody here knows, there were 11,000 Japanese Americans who were incarcerated, I hate to say it, by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a Democrat, using the same statute that Trump is using right now to expel people from this country. Same war, same fight against tyranny, same patriotism, and in one place they were ready to fight the Nazis in Italy, and in the other place we were incarcerating American citizens less than a lifetime ago on the eastern plains of Colorado. And Jody Goose and I have made that part of the National Park Service. So that's another piece of the work that we've done together. And it's a reminder to me of why these guys are trying to whitewash our history. They're trying to tell a story of America that's not the true story of America. And I used to tell a story that, think about the patriotism of Camp Hale versus, the tyranny of Camp Amachi. But it's a much more complicated story than that when you think about the people who were actually locked up in that camp and had to make the decision, as some of them did, even though their kids were locked up there, to send their other kids to fight fascism in Europe. Can you imagine that decision? And there were people in that camp who said, they're not going to go as long as we're locked up here. And I don't think we have any right to judge either of those decisions in retrospect, but you can feel the patriotism in those decisions. And that's the moment we're living in right now. We're not locked up in that camp today. And I'm not saying exactly. That's what we have to do. We have to learn from it, and we need to teach the next generation about it. And in the meantime, we need to protect our public lands, including Thompson Divide, which we have kept protected from oil and gas drilling, including Camp Emmons outside of Crescent Butte, where we finally ended the longest mine fight in the entire western United States, including the Hermosa Creek watershed, which we have protected, including Camp Hale and Camp Amachi. And part of what we have to remind everybody is that Republicans and Democrats and unaffiliated voters here, as you said, are totally in agreement. And the Trump administration and the Republicans in the House and Mike Lee from Utah, who's in my chamber, are totally out of step with the American people. Okay, sorry to go on for so long, but you hit my head. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for having me. Thank you for coming today.
Thanks. Michael will do, by the way, it's up to you, but go ahead.
So, I teach in rural Colorado in La Junta, actually at a trade school. I actually, due to the circumstances, I had to take on a social studies position this year. And that was a tough job, because I wanted to have open discussions about things that were being said and being done in our government. And I actually had a lot of threats brought to me from parents contradicting the things that were actually happening in front of us. And my frustration is in part that I don't think we're doing enough to reach out to explain to the people the consequences of the real things that are happening right now with our government. I don't think we have people that are reaching the people that don't watch the news every night. They just rely on the fact that our government is going to work, and they're not seeing the consequences of the things that are happening in front of us. So I want to know, when I turn on my phone and I watch, I get an FYP, which is for your page, which means that there are things that are customized for my interests that show up on my things. And I get videos for Saturday Night Live. And at the end of that video, there is a 10 to 20 second clip that comes in that talks about how great the current president is and the steps that he does. And somebody is paying for that. Why isn't the Democratic Party countering those things with their own pages? Why are they not stating the current facts of what's happening? Why do I have to cower and derive from the facts and say that I'm not going to say what's happening in order to keep my job? Right. And that's basically, what are we doing to express to those people that don't watch the news? What are we going to do when the Medicaid, unfortunately, looks like will probably come into effect? Who are we going to have in the community that says, this is why this happened, and how can we change it?
It's so important, and thank you for teaching, by the way. Thank you for teaching in La Junta. The part that I'm going to just stipulate to everything we just talked about on Camp Amachi, because that's part of this, and also say that it is really important for people to know the history of our country, for everybody. And there are parts of it that we like to forget. There are parts of it that Donald Trump likes to particularly forget. One of the things when kids come to see me in Washington, I never have been a social studies teacher or a history teacher. I think I'm a frustrated history teacher, social studies teacher. But they'll come to visit DC and with their parents, they'll show up in my office sometimes. And there's this kind of feeling that it was all just there. Like they'll see the Supreme Court and the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial and whatever. And I say none of this was here 230 years ago. And by the way, when you mentioned while you're here, did you know that the Capitol building where I work was built by enslaved human beings? And I say, no, that wasn't on the tour. And I said, well, that's important to understand that, and it is important to understand. This country has a kind of, we were born in a unique crucible here. We really were. On the one hand, we had the highest ideals, at least as far as I'm concerned, that any humans have ever written on the page. The words in the Constitution, the words in the Declaration of Independence. And at the same time, we had the worst impulses in human history. Human slavery and the genocide of Native Americans. That's not a woke history of America. That is the history of America. And it is critical for us to understand that crucible, just as it's critical for us to understand the crucible of Camp Amachi, or the crucible that we're going in today. And as I mentioned earlier, this is one of my biggest concerns that you're raising. is that we're all getting information from silos that reflect what our belief system is. And that is, I think, potentially fatal for a democracy, to use your observation, John. Fatal. Because what a democracy is really supposed to be about is not agreeing with each other. It's about having disagreements and being able to sort through those disagreements. So you can create, and you can have some agreement on the facts as well. But in the end, the idea is that we're going to create wisdom by having a clash of ideas. That doesn't happen in a society with a totalitarian. Like there's no clash of ideas in Russia with Putin in charge, or in China with Xi Jinping. And they don't have the benefit of the wisdom of, or the imagination of, a disagreement between us. You know, like the worst decisions I make are the ones I make at home, alone, in my basement, not contending with someone else's point of view. Even my own daughters, like, even one of them would help make a better decision. And I know you feel the same way. And if people feel like they can't have that open conversation, if people feel like they're circumscribed in what they can say, if people feel like they can't teach the real curriculum, that's a big problem. And then on top of that is the digital problem. And let me just say, in answer to your question, I believe this is a place where we left that, call it an analog age, a pre-digital age, the Walter Cronkite age I was mentioning earlier, and now we're in the digital age. And Democrats have been left behind in the analog age. They have been left completely behind. And, you know, Musk and his little Doge guys, and Trump, who's a master of all that stuff, and Fox News, and all the rest of them, they're inhabiting that other world. So you have asked a question that I actually, today, do not have the answer to because we have to develop it. And if we don't, we're just going to continue to lose. And we can start by making sure what you just said is something that people understand, which is who cut this stuff off and who's trying to sell off their public land. One thing, anyway, let me stop there. I'll save the one thing for later. But thank you. And thanks for teaching. I have to get the summer off or something. A couple days.
These are going to be our last two questions. Our last two. First one's going to be 7736. 77.
Let me just get a sense of where all of you are. We could do 6 more if that's better than 2 more, or we could do 2 more and be done. Whatever. 6? Okay. 6? Or is that 5 or 6? 6. Okay. Is that a middle finger or a... Okay. Go ahead.
First one is going to be 7736.
Do you have the 600s or is
I'm just pulling out
that's
the basket.
I'm just pulling it out of Easter money.
And the second one is 7775.
Sure.
773. Like everybody else that's here, it seems like we're concerned about what's going on with the country. And I remember when I lived in Nebraska for a while, and every day at lunch, I had to listen to Paul Harvey. And I kind of got to enjoy it a little bit. But it definitely was leaning to the right side background. And closer? Okay. Anyway, in response to this guy's question is how do we combat that?
Yeah.
Do we go out and buy radio stations? do we get people that are willing to stand on a soapbox and scream in the middle of the street? Because I'm afraid that might be what we're going to have to do. I spent a lot of time campaigning for various candidates. You're one of them. And matter of fact, I was there when the day they bombed, not your office, but John's office. I went in the next day and somebody tore it apart. And, you know, I see some things happen and it's getting scary. You know, it's not normal. And I hope we get through it. But I'm afraid if we don't start fighting back in some way, and I just, you know, get on the soapbox, guys. That's about it for me.
Thank you. Thank you. I think what was it, Paul Harvey? What was his tagline? Do you remember that? What was it? We gotta get some younger people here. Speaking of what?
Hi, I'm Carissa Thayer. I have a lot of experience in the field of psychology and have worked with veterans and have worked with folks on Medicaid programs to help them stay independent in their homes. And over the past couple of years, given the circumstances that we already had, I am frequently talked to about how suicide feels like the biggest option. And it's a lot of weight to hold. And the biggest thing that I want to know out of this town hall in particular is, what are you willing to sacrifice? Because I'm willing to sacrifice anything for those people, for me, for the people I love the most. And I want to know, do you have what it takes to sacrifice something? Because this is big. This is bigger than just one bill. This is bigger than several decisions. It's a digital war, if you will. And do you have that? Do you have what it takes to sacrifice some of your individual humanity?
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for thank you. What's your name? Carissa. Thank you for your beautiful question and for your service to our veterans as well. And this was one of the number one things that people were talking about at the DFW Hall before. It won't surprise you to know that. And the importance of veterans taking care of us. Are you a veteran? No. The importance of veterans taking care of other veterans, but also the importance of being able to have the kind of professional help that you represent to them. So I want to say thank you for that and for bringing it into this, because, you know, like some other things I could pick, there's nothing that shows how we're doing as a society, I think, more than how we're doing for our veterans. And we're not doing a good enough job. Things are getting worse, not better. You know, and the suicide rates are going up, not down. He doesn't, you're right. The mental health issues are getting more challenging. The social media contribution to these mental health issues is extraordinary. You know, for people all over America, including our veterans, and I would say as a former school superintendent parent with 3 daughters, as for kids as well, who are being bombarded by these algorithms that are affecting their mental health. So we need to do much, much more than we have done for our vets. I do think my answer is yes, but you know, you'll have to make that judgment for yourself. But I think it's the appropriate question for all of them. goes back to the question I think I was asking earlier about John Lewis on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. That's a sacrifice. The people that were behind bars at Amachi were sending their kids overseas or not sending their kids overseas. That is a sacrifice. And we're in one of those moments today. And
when are you going to get arrested? When are you ordering?
well, maybe I'll send John and then I'll get bail him out. Is that, you may never see him again. But, you know, I think civil disobedience is important, protests are important. I was in a place recently, a town hall like this, where people said, he said, I'm so radical, I don't even think protests are going to matter anymore. And I said, really? Because I was driving by the Capitol in Denver the other day, and I looked over, I wasn't supposed to be there, but I just happened to be going by with my wife Susan, and I saw these blue and yellow flags there. And I stopped and I went over there and said, what are you doing? I could tell, obviously, because they had those blue and yellow flags, that they were there, even with Trump there, even with Trump not caring, even with the craziness of the digital coins and the freaking airplane from Qatar and the, having these Republicans walk the plank, obviously on purpose, to force them to vote for Pete Hegseth to be the Secretary of Defense as the first vote they took when in the entire Congress, just to show who was in charge, Donald Trump. Even while all that was going on, these citizens of America were going to protest to stand up for Ukraine and to stand up for people that are fighting not just for Ukraine, but for democracy, and but for the Western world, for the United States of America, in their view. And they're doing it not because they think it's futile, but because they think there's a chance that they could make a difference. And we have everything to lose. And so what I would say again is the only thing we can't sacrifice our hope and our ability to be able to be relentless in the face of this. Because otherwise, we'll fail. And no one else faced with a similar challenge, they're all different, has given up in the history of our country. And we can't give up. And the more corrupt you think it is, by the way, the harder we have to fight. And that's the only option, because if you don't, it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So thank you for being here. Let me tell you the one thing I'm not willing to sacrifice, the future of our children. They had nothing to do with putting us in the position of All right, we have a couple more.
The next two questions are going to be 7685, 7685, and 7701. 7701.
Oh, somebody in the back.
Yes, my name is Rodney Thompson, and my question has to do with another vote that took place, putting cash patrol in charge of the FBI, but that's not really the question. But since he's made the statement, he's taking 1,500 agents out of the headquarters building. Is there any chance you could promote getting a squad of them into Pueblo County? Yeah. My understanding, we're over 240% above the national average in crime.
Yeah.
And we need some help here.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I know that I know you need some help hiring police in Pueblo County, and maybe some of those. Where else would anybody want to live but here? I'm happy to pass that along. Thank you very much. Okay. Jason, do you have? Yes.
Hi, my name is Sally Sharp, and I'm representing Great Old Rockford Wilderness, and we're a women-led conservation organization based in Durango. And my question is, public land sell-off and reconciliation didn't pass, right? Because the Rules Committee and the House has now a public lands caucus. What can the Senate do to prevent all the things that are wrong with that bill, including possible public land sell-off again because it might leave?
Right.
And are you on that caucus?
I don't think we have one in this.
Oh, you don't have one?
But you say something that'll give you some optimism. Go ahead before you finish it.
Yeah, I looked it up on the internet. It looked like you did have a caucus, so that you didn't have a caucus. But how can you, will you fight for us?
Yeah, we definitely will. And I'm not going to repeat what I said earlier about public lands, but let me just say there is broad bipartisan support in the Senate to try to preserve public land. There are a handful of Republican ideologues in there that want to do everything they can to sell off the public lands in the United States, like Mike. And actually, I had to overcome him to get the Campomachi bill done. And we got to make sure that what they took out of the House stays there. This is a case, though, where they actually, I'm not even going to say they were responsive to the American people, because as you said, I'm not sure, with the Medicaid cuts, for example, they're not doing that. But I do think that, I'm not even going to guess why they took it out, but they took it out. And I don't see it going back in the Senate. That's the part that I would say to make you optimistic. But don't give up and keep paying attention, and let's make sure we end up in the right spot there.
Yeah, we got a Pueblo County resolution passed.
Great.
In favor of public lands, which is great.
Thank you, that is great. And it makes a difference to have people at the local level fighting for this. I mean, the Campale bill or the Thompson Divide that I mentioned earlier, Hermosa Creek, which is in your backyard, Chimney Rock, which is in your backyard. These are all things that we've worked on together to try to protect. And when there's a groundswell from the local level, it makes it harder. It doesn't mean they won't ignore it, but this is a case where they seem to have paid attention. Well, Mike Lee is one that comes to mind for those that.
We have our last two questions. It's going to be 7780, 7780, and 7816. 7816.
Thank you for hanging in there. We've got two more, and then I'll get out of your way.
I'm loaded with, very impressed with the information I've received in coming to this town hall. I'm a retired teacher, so I appreciate your support. I'm education, and I'm worried for the young children. I know they've got preschools in Pueblo, and I was an early childhood kindergarten teacher for many years, and realized, and I know how much it's supported the whole system to have early childhood, and was grateful when Congress set that up. But I see the anxiety of this young man sitting over here, he tried to raise his hand, and I want to work at my number for you to ask a question.
Great.
What was your name? Donna, thank you so much. Well, Mr. Bennet, I have a couple of things. First of all, I have a gift for you. My name is Peter Zealy, and I'm going to be the commander of the VFW in Canyon City on July 1st. So let me tell you a little story about it. Back in World War I, after the battles ended and the next spring came, where all the bodies were torn apart, there was millions of poppies, these flowers, and they grew on the graves of all the dead. And in the VFW, we give them to people in exchange for a donation, and sir, I want to offer you these poppies from forests as well. That brings me to our next point. Our VFW in Canyon City is in some serious need of help, and I wanted to offer to serve you breakfast or a dinner so we can raise money for our post. And so I wanted to, instead of come up here and ask for money from you, I wanted an opportunity to ask to serve you and the rest of the veterans in the area. And then I just wanted to comment on a policy that was spoken about here. I said, well, shouldn't say policy. There was a lady in the back who was in behavioral health. Can you raise your hand, please? So I want to thank you for doing what you do. I know myself, I spent 6 months as an inpatient at the VA, dealing with PTSD. And so your services are greatly appreciated. There's a lot of veterans that don't reach out for help, but I do want to say for the ones that do, your profession is very needed. And Mr. Bennett, I've had the experience of calling the Veterans Crisis Line, and the police arrested me for calling the Veterans Crisis Line and put me in the hospital for 3 days against my will. And then when I was released, they took my clothes, gave me someone else's clothes, and tried to take my service dog from me. So as this lady back here was talking about her profession, I was thinking of my experience, and it eroded a lot of trust between myself and calling that number. So I've decided if I need help again, I'll just check myself into the emergency room. But I think maybe examining the policies on what you do, what law enforcement does with those cases, would do better to build trust between law enforcement and veterans. I don't think that those law enforcement officers meant any harm, but the lady I spoke to on the crisis line, I was trying to be honest with her, and just took away 3 days of my life in great humiliation. But thank you for your time, sir.
You pick. I'll be there for breakfast or dinner. Whatever you want. Thank you, Madam Teacher, for teaching early childhood and for giving up your question, which is the kind of sacrifice that we're all talking about here today, and the most important kind of sacrifice. So thank you for that. In the back, you get the last word.
Yeah, I know. I'm following after the gentleman.
A lot of pressure.
Yeah. So my name is Montine Bronner, and I call you almost every day, or at least the people in your offices. November 6th was a gut punch. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I was sobbing. I was sobbing at me. And I didn't know what to do. And I still don't know what to do. So I told my neighbor here, she left. She has never been to a town hall. And I said, me either, we're both virgins. And she's like, thought it was a raffle or something fun.
That's in the next.
But I'm also a protest virgin. I never have been to a protest until this year because I am so mad. I have never called my senators and my representative every single day except this time around because I am so mad, and I am also feeling helpless. Not hopeless, but helpless. So one of the ladies I listen to on YouTube, I love her, she says all the time, she's out of Oregon, she says they're power of the people. She didn't steal. She really liked what that guy said, who talked for 25 hours or whatever.
Cory Booker.
The power of the people is greater than the people in power. Okay? So she helped me believe in the power of protest and of us gathering. That us together are powerful. You know? Anyway, so my question, if there is such a question, is how much of that do you believe in? And I had asked you this when I called, are you willing to march with us? To show us that you believe in the power of the people.
Yeah.
That collectively, yes, thank you.
Thank you. Look, yes, I'm happy to. Yes, I will. I mentioned Ukrainian protests earlier. I'm happy to come to other things. Thank you for calling my office, by the way, every day. I appreciate that. And thank you for calling my mom home, as I mentioned. No, thank you for calling me. And thank you for ending this conversation the way that you did. Look, we're living through a terrible moment in American history. We're living through a terrifying moment in world history. And none of us asked to be in the situation that we're in today. And it's made it more infuriating because none of the constraints of the democracy that we've all grown up believing are the rules of the road are of any importance to Donald Trump. And beyond that, he's not subject to something that many people are, which is shame, something, or any sense of moral responsibility to anybody but himself. And everybody here knows that's true. I would disagree with somebody up here who said the one thing that he wants out of us is for us to give up. And that's the one thing we can't do. I'm not going to stand up here on this stage and tell you we're going to fix this tomorrow. I'm not going to tell you that we have a perfect answer on how to deal with the digital world that we're in right now, or that we've thought of all the ways in which we can deal with the 53 votes the Republicans have in the Senate, or that we've got a scientific answer to the question of how to win the midterm election. What I do believe is that if we give up, as I said earlier, it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy, and the kids that graduate this weekend in this high school have a reason to deserve or to feel confident in what we're going to do on their behalf, which is to continue to show up and show up and show up. That's why I'm here today. I mean, I'm grateful that you're all here today. I'm here having another town hall, and I've got 2 more scheduled next week, one in Denver and one in Centennial. So if you didn't get enough, you can come up there as well. Because I think that's something I am obligated to do and should do, and is my responsibility. And participating in marches, I've already done that, and I'll be glad to do that again. But I guess I would just end by saying this. In addition to focusing on all the things that we talked about here today, I'm going to put one more burden on you, which is let's watch a little bit less cable television at night. Let's watch a little bit less of that news. Let's spend a little bit less time doom scrolling on our social media. We can do it. I wish you wouldn't do it while you're driving. I wish you wouldn't do it while you're in the classroom when you should be listening to the teacher or engaging in that discussion. But find a veteran who you can go read to. Find a veteran who you can take out to a park. Find a veteran who you can help have a conversation with when they're having a difficult time. And if you don't want to do it for a veteran, you feel like I'm pandering because they're standing right here or sitting right here, find a school kid in Pueblo who could use you to read to them. Find an early childhood teacher in Pueblo who could use an assistant in their classroom during the summertime here or at the Boys and Girls Club to be able to help Angela do what she's doing there. We can't be so focused on the insanity back there that we forget our responsibility to each other. And that is not giving up. I think that's the opposite of giving. That's saying we're going to fight through this and make the country a better place. We're going to fight through this and make Colorado a better place. We're going to fight through this with no doubt that we're going to leave our kids in a better position than they're in today. Because that is our obligation, I think. Thank you for being here today.